Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Overwatch League Fan Thoughts and Analysis. Today, I will be taking a look at the Boston Uprising 2020 roster. Of course, last season, 2019 season, the Boston Uprising finished the season in 19th overall. So, pretty weak. There are a lot of teams that are very close to them in terms of actual record. They had the same record as Washington, they had the same record as Toronto, but the problem was they had really bad differential. And that's really the kicker. Boston Uprising finished last season with an 8-20 record and a minus 37 differential. So not a great showing from the Boston Uprising this past season. A team that went from third place in the 2018 season to 19th. A lot of changes, obviously, for this roster, but still not something you'd really expect. But they've made some changes this season to bolster their roster, as well as, of course, gotten rid of a bunch of players. So let's take a look. First thing I want to mention is that this team has a new coaching staff. They add Mineral, who used to be the coach for the Florida Mayhem, before they went the All-Korean route. He was the coach there. They added Ilka, and then they got rid of Gunba and Sheikh, who were their previous assistant coaches, I believe. So that is your team coaching staff. Now let's take a look at what players were let go for this team. Kelix, Aimgod, Alemong, Persia, RCK, Stellar, all released, and Blase was traded. So this team is going to look very, very different in the 2020 season. The question is, how good are they going to look? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Now, this team doesn't have their final roster. At least I don't believe they do. If they do, I'd be even more concerned. But we'll talk about what they have, and then we will talk about it. So DPS, they hold on to Color Hex, of course, from last season. And they add Jerry, formerly of Meta Athena and X6 Gaming. They add Munchkin, of course, formerly of the Soul Dynasty. Their tank line, they have Fusions and Axiom returning. And then they have Mufin, who's a flex tank player from Uprising Academy, who was on a 2-way contract. And then for the supports, they have Swimmer and Myeonbong. Swimmer promoted from Uprising Academy. Myeonbong comes from O2. So they don't have a full-time or a full rostered flex tank. They only have Mufin, who is, of course, on a 2-way contract. So that's something to note. They will need to sign another flex tank. Who? I don't know. So I'm not going to try to bash them for that. I assume they're going to find somebody cheap, somebody weird. I mean, I guess they could go and they could sign someone who impressed in contenders who we haven't seen yet get signed. Whether it be a North American contenders player or a Korean contenders player, I have no idea. There's obviously always the possibility that that is the case. But this team isn't a particular favorite of mine. I'm not crazy about it. There's a lot of players that they don't really have the ability to go after, and they won't be able to sign from the Overwatch League. Like most of the really good flex tanks who were previously in the Overwatch League, I just said most of the Overwatch. Most of the flex tanks who were on Overwatch League teams that aren't anymore are not free agents any longer. The only one who is Dako. I don't know if Boston Uprising would consider signing Dako. At least I don't believe Dako has been signed by anybody. Maybe he has, and I just didn't know. But Dako's really the only big named flex tank player that isn't on a team right now. So maybe he gets signed by somebody. Maybe he doesn't. I have no idea. Um, but he's certainly a player to watch out for, to potentially be a player the Boston Uprising signs. I don't think they will, though. But looking at this roster that they have, let's talk about what they have and not speculate about what they could have. I look at this Boston Uprising roster, and the biggest concern I have is how is this roster that is a bunch of players from all over the world going to mesh together? Myeonbong as a player is someone I've heard a lot of really good things about. I've heard that he is an exceptional player. He's very good. He does his job very well. He's one of the players who I've heard a lot of people say, like, if there was anybody that needed to be signed to an Overwatch League roster as a flex support, like, Myeonbong was number one. He was just one of those players who, like, was doing so well in contenders that he is going to look really good in the Overwatch League no matter where he ends up. He ends up with the Boston Uprising, which a very good signing for them. Definitely an improvement over Aim God and Persia. But how is he going to do paired with Swimmer? Who's Swimmer, also a good player, very solid player, coming up from Uprising Academy. So you have two players who don't have Overwatch League experience as your support line, which happens, and that's a risk you take. So that's something to be noted. Their tank line, we don't know who their flex tank's going to be yet, obviously. They have Fusions, who will be the starter again, and he's the main shot caller for this team. But the thing that I think with Fusions is he felt like as the season progressed last season, he didn't look as good, which makes me think that Goats was a meta that Fusions was really thriving in more so than the later metas, and as Goats kind of began to fall away, Boston began to struggle a lot more. Now they also had a lot of roster turnover, and they had a lot of things that happened with behind the scenes drama with Aim God and Kelix, and the whole thing with them was very weird. So maybe that was just something that really like kind of permeated through the whole team and affected the whole team, and the team kind of just struggled as a result of that. But this is a team that had a very strong stage 1 last season. They had a pretty good stage 2. It wasn't great, but like it was okay. It was the kind of thing like they struggled, but like okay, things are changing a little bit. And then stage 3 and stage 4, they were just atrocious. I think they won 1 game in those 2 stages combined. I think they were 1-13 in stage 3 and stage 4, so they didn't perform super well. And I think they kept the parts of their roster that were the strongest, which were Fusions and Color Hex. And Axiom you hold on to, though. You don't really need Axiom, but I mean, they have him. There's no reason to get rid of him if he's already under contract. Why bother? So I think, Blase was another part of this roster that was really strong, and then they traded him to Houston for money, and maybe they're going to use that money to get a big signing that we haven't seen yet. But I'm not crazy about this roster. The DPS I think is going to be fine. That's the thing I'm least worried about. Color Hex is very good. I expect Color Hex to still play a lot, though. Jerry and Munchkin are both Korean players. They have that just natural synergy in that way. They don't have to try to translate what they're saying into English. I don't know if either one of those players have ever played on a mixed roster. Munchkin's been playing for Seoul Dynasty for the past couple of seasons, and I don't believe before that he had any experience on mixed rosters. He played for Lunatic High, which was not a roster like that. He did actually play on Laser Kittens, which is a European team, where he played with some players who were not Korean. So he does have some experience playing on some mixed rosters, but not a ton. He played on Lunatic High, obviously, which is where he played with like the really good players. There was a lot of really good players that were on the Seoul Dynasty that, of course, they were on the Lunatic High and then went to the Seoul Dynasty, and then he was with Rhino's Gaming Titan, which was another Korean team. So he doesn't have the most experience on mixed rosters, but he has some, so that's good to know. Jerry, on the other hand, he's Jerry. Like, that's hilarious. Jerry's always been on Korean teams. So it is what it is. Now, something that to be noted about Jerry that I want to make known, because there's a chance that the Boston Uprising don't announce another player. The Boston Uprising yesterday announced the signing of Munchkin. So there's still precedent for them to still announce players, because they announced one recently. Jerry started his career as a flex tank player. So if they feel comfortable with having Jerry just play flex tank, that's possibly what they do. He's known a little bit for Diva. I'm sure he can play a pretty good Roadhog, which the meta may be going in that direction just based on the stuff we're seeing. I mean, there's a possibility that Roadhog is the hero you need to know how to play. It also could end up still being Sigma. We don't know yet. It's a little too early to tell exactly what the meta is going to be. But there's definitely the possibility that Jerry is going to end up playing a lot of flex tank, but I don't believe he will, just based on what I think they've seen, because they've been teasing a Tom for Jerry, like Tom and Jerry, and they teased Munchkin, right? So they're teasing another DPS player to be alongside Jerry, which makes me think that that means that they want him to play DPS. But there's always a chance he could play some Hog or some Diva if they need it. So who knows? We'll see. They haven't signed anybody yet. Like I said, it's all speculation at this point in time. They haven't signed anybody. They haven't come out and said anything about anybody. There's been no rumors or reports about who they may be signing. It's all just up in the air. So we have no idea who they might be signing. But they have Muffin, and I expected Muffin to be the player that they just had on their roster, but they put him on a 2-way contract. So, it is what it is. Which is weird, because they also said, it's graduation day for Muffin, and then they're like, it's graduation day, he's on a 2-way contract. That's not really graduation, that's just, okay. It's like, alright, if that's how you're going to do it. But this team's interesting. I don't think that this team is particularly promising. I'm just not impressed with what they have done. Now, maybe they could be very good. The Boston Uprising 2018 season built their roster on, we don't know what we are, or you don't know what we are. We're a bunch of no-name players, but we're going to perform. And they looked like that could have been what they were going to do last season early on, and then they just kind of fell apart. But I think this team is actually very strong. Probably stronger than we realize. But I just still don't think they're going to do super well. Especially they're in a division that I think is going to be very tough for them. They're in a division with New York, who are still New York. They're still very good, and they still look like a team that will probably be the best team in that division. You have Toronto, who look very good. I think Toronto has possibly the most improved roster in the league, and we'll talk about them next week. And I'll give you my thoughts on them. But I think Toronto looks very good. London and Paris are the interesting ones. Paris looks like they could be really good, but it's going to take them a little while because the really big Korean players that they signed won't be able to play early in the season. They won't be ready till the end of the season because they won't be old enough, so till halfway through the season. So it's about kind of how long can you last and compete and be a potential playoff team before those players are able to play. London has completely changed their roster. I don't even know who's on their roster at this point in time. They're something else, right? But Boston's going to have to compete in a very competitive division, where even though, there's questions about London and there's questions about Paris and there's, a strong New York and a strong-looking Toronto, right? Even with those questions surrounding two of the teams, I still think Boston looks like the weakest roster, because I think if you take two rosters, okay, and you compare them, right, and they're about equal in terms of level, I will almost always say that the all Korean roster is going to be better because there is just so much more synergy that you just get automatically. You don't have to worry about having players try to communicate in English, even if they're not an English speaker, and all this other stuff. It's a very, very easy thing to look at and say, I think it is better for players if they are just a Korean player on a Korean roster. So it's where I'm really kind of iffy on this Boston Uprising roster. I don't think this is a great roster. They have some good players. Obviously, the signing of Yeonbong is very good. Color Hex is a very good player. Fusions has shown a lot of really good moments, though he's also had a bit of struggle at times. Munchkin, of course, is a player who has tons of Overwatch League experience. Struggled a little bit in the 2019 season, struggled a little bit as well in the 2018 season. He was never the most consistent and best performing player, but he's good. He does the job very well. So it'll be interesting to see what this team does, but I'm just not feeling great about this Boston Uprising squad. I'd put them definitely in the bottom half of the league and probably in the low bottom half of the league. I just don't think this team has the most promising roster for making a deep run at potentially being a championship team. I just don't see it. And there's a lot of teams that I think are not looking to be championship teams this season. I think there's a lot of teams who are, I mean, maybe they are. I think if your goal isn't to win championships, I think that's would be dumb. So I'll assume that all teams are trying to win championships, but Boston is a team that's trying to lowball championships. They're trying to make the championship, and they're trying to win the championship by spending the least amount of money possible, which makes sense. That's what a lot of people will do, because it's like, why would you spend a lot of money when you could spend like no money at all? But I think it's important when you look at this team to realize kind of what they are and who they are. And to me, this team is very interesting and very questionable, and I don't think this is a team that will make it super far. But at this point, I'm just rambling. So I'm going to end this video here. I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments down below. What you think of this Boston Uprising roster? Who do you think they will bring on as their flex tank, if anybody at all? I would love to hear your thoughts down below. But that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.